Mike Donoghue is the Executive Director of Catholic Charities. Catholic Charities is the greatest private provider of social services in this area. They serve in faith to Jesus Christ, and they serve people of all faiths.
So many blessings. The two I'd really love to mention is just such an amazing group of people that I get to work with every day at Catholic Charities. And these are people that, they're not doing this work because they expect to become wealthy. These are people that come in and do this work every day because they really enjoy and want to help other people. And the way the world works, I managed a big team on Wall Street, and year end, there's always bonus time on Wall Street, and at times I would go through year end and pay people a tremendous amount of money, and most of them would come out saying, "Oh, it's not enough," and I think I deserve more than this person, and how could I get paid this? And now I work with a team of people who make a significantly less amount of money. And, if I can get them a 2 or 3 or 4% cost of living increase or bonus at year end, they're all thanking me because they have the opportunity to do such amazing work each and every day. So that part is really a blessing. And also, I guess like you, Bishop Frank, I actually have a front row seat to all the kindness and goodness of so many of the people across the diocese. The pandemic hit, and I took this job really just at the beginning of December of 2019, really got started in January 2020, and the pandemic hit a couple months later. So I was just getting used to, where the bathroom was and who all the people were. And the pandemic hits, and the demand for everything that we do doubled and tripled, overnight. And I just, didn't know how we would survive. But so many people called and stepped up and said, "How can I help? Can I volunteer? Can we make sandwiches at home? What can we do?" And during that period, what certainly helped, well, a lot of things were closed. So, the arts were closed, the library was closed, the nature center was closed. But Catholic Charities, we stayed open the entire time, helping people in need. And thanks to all the generosity and the volunteers, our donations went up more than 50% during that period of time. So we didn't know how we would get through it, but there's so much goodness and generosity. We live in a time where everybody tells you about all the negative things in the world, but I'm blessed to see all the generosity and all the good people who donate their time and their energy and their talent. And
well, Mike, so for those who are listening, they may not know all of the services and the scope and breadth and depth of what Catholic Charities does. So why don't you give us like the 2-minute summary? When you say Catholic Charities, what exactly does that include?
Sure, that's a good question. And, when I took over, it does frustrate me that a lot of people across the diocese don't really have a great idea of what Catholic Charities does. So we're trying hard to correct that, but hopefully this will help too for all of your listeners. So hopefully most people know that, starting in 1916, Catholic Charities has been providing social services across the diocese. One of the things that all Catholics should be proud of, if you were to take all the Catholic Charities around the state of Connecticut and look at all the services we provide, we believe nobody provides more services, social services around the state than Catholic Charities. So really only the state of Connecticut provides more. And Bishop, if you were to try to add up, then that's just Catholic Charities. Imagine if you could add up all the work that all of our parishes do. So if you take all of our parishes plus Catholic Charities, it's an amazing amount of social services and something we as Catholics should be proud of. That there's lots of people that love to complain about things we do wrong in the church, but really nobody across the globe.
Look at my desk. Yes, they do. They do.
Yes, but that's something we should all be proud of. And it's just a lot of us working together. And, so our mission is to help the needy and the vulnerable of all faiths. So we don't just serve Catholics. We serve anybody of all faiths. And we're trying to help people to permanently improve their lives, hopefully to provide supportive services that enable families to rise up out of poverty and overcome barriers. And the hope is that we can help people achieve self-sufficiency and independence. we like to talk about ourselves as being the agency of the hand up, not the handout, right? How do we give people that hand up? And so the basic areas where we're one of the biggest providers around the diocese of food and nutrition. We run a number of soup kitchens and food pantries. We provide Meals on Wheels for homebound elderly around Fairfield County. We're a big provider of mental health counseling. Hopefully we can talk a little bit about that later. We have a number of homeless outreach programs in all the major urban areas. We have housing case management to help the homeless as they move into housing and try to help them find housing. We provide immigration legal assistance. There's a tremendous number of immigrants who are struggling, and we try to help them in terms of obtaining green cards and getting them on the path to citizenship. For years, we've been a major provider of adoption services, where we can hopefully find permanent families for children who can't be cared for by their biological parents, or assist couples to become parents via adoption. And that's one of the biggest surprises to me as I go around the diocese. People will come up to me and look at me eye and say, I got to thank you at Catholic Charities. You helped bring my son to me 25 years ago. And now he's in college, or now he's a lawyer, or now he's a doctor. So that's something we've done for years. We run a preschool education program, Room to Grow Preschool in Norwalk. We have financial education and loans programs by our family loan program. We have a community advocacy program. So we have a number of services that help people in need across the diocese.
Right. So, Mike, how many people actually work for you in Catholic Charities in all these different divisions?
So we have 150 employees.
150 to do everything you just described.
Yes, but we couldn't do many of the things that we do without all the volunteers across the diocese. So we have thousands of volunteers. Probably the biggest source of volunteers is at our soup kitchens, with all the food drives we do, serving meals each and every day. That happened. It was beautiful all during the pandemic when we couldn't have people inside the soup kitchens. The demand increased by 3 and 4 times the need for food and meals. But families would make meals at home and come and drop them off to us at the New Covenant Center or the Thomas Merton Center or Morning Glory. So yes, we have 150 employees who work very, very hard each and every day. It's just a fantastic team, but we also couldn't do it without all the volunteer support.
So Mike, we're going to go to a break in just a second, but just a quick question. So every year, how much money do you have to raise just to keep our services going? Give us a ballpark figure.
Yes, that's a good question. Our annual budget is about $13 million. Approximately half of that come from some programs, mostly mental health programs that are funded by the government. But the balance we have to raise individually. So it's, it approaches $6 million each and every year. And we unfortunately don't have much of an endowment. So we really depend on the generosity of all those folks out there across the diocese.
So my last question before break. So if a person's listening saying, I want to financially help Catholic Charities, I don't know how does that person do that? Like today, when they hear this podcast, what would they do?
Call me immediately and I'd be happy to talk to you. Now, certainly they could go to ccfairfield.org. That's our website, certainly ccfairfield.org, which is Catholic Charities Fairfield. And people can donate in various different ways. If somebody wants to support mental health, they can do that. They want to support food, they can do that. They want to support our immigration programs, they can do that. And would be happy to talk to anybody that wants more information about how they could help us provide some support in any way.
Excellent. Yeah, our listeners know that I very rarely raise the question of donations and money with any of our guests. But for you, Mike, in particular, I think it's fair to say, and you could explain it to us even further, that the needs that Catholic Charities addresses continues to grow. The needs grow. One would think coming out of COVID, but that has had a minimal effect on the fact that more and more people are being left behind. So Would you speak to that a bit? What are you seeing from your vantage point?
Sure. Yes, I'd be happy to speak about that. And you're so right, Bishop. The need just continues to grow. So, COVID was difficult for everybody, but in some ways, for the wealthy members across the diocese, COVID wasn't so bad. The stock market went up, housing prices went up. But for all those on the lower end of the economic spectrum, they're just getting hurt more and more, mainly because of the inflation. Housing prices, rental prices have gone up significantly over the last 2 to 3 years, and the cost for everything, food, gas, groceries, rent has just spiraled out of control. Imagine making $15 an hour in Fairfield County. And we encounter families all the time that are working really hard, working 2 jobs, just struggling to make ends meet, and they can barely pay their rent and they don't know where to go for food. And so one of the things that I'm not proud of, and I know most of our listeners are not, Fairfield County is number 1 in the nation in income inequality. And from my seat, that gap has only widened over the course of the last couple of years due to the rising costs of so many things. And, so there's just lots of hardworking folks out there that are trying to make ends meet. And, sometimes there's the narrative, well, they just have to work harder and they just have to keep, I was successful because I worked harder than others. And while that's true, I think we don't know until you walk in somebody else's shoes, you never know what they're going through. And so many families, many of us grew up in a family where there was a lot of love and a close family. But if you grew up in a family where there was domestic violence or drug abuse or alcohol abuse, there's lots of families that have grown up in poverty and they're trying really hard. And our job is to try to help those families that want to help themselves, to give them that hand up.
I'm going to illustrate something to I think give even greater proof, evidence to what you're talking about. I remember having a meeting years ago, even before COVID, with the superintendent of schools in the city of Bridgeport. And in that conversation, the superintendent made the observation that while the truancy rate among high schoolers in public school in Bridgeport is very high, she said, you need to understand the reasons behind that. Because many of our high schoolers, juniors and seniors, are not going to school because they are getting jobs in McDonald's and Burger King and other places to supplement their parents' income because there's just not enough money to keep food on the table. So when you consider that, then they're creating a system, right, where these young people are being denied the studies that they should have to meet an immediate need, but putting them at a disadvantage for their futures. So you're just perpetuating the situation because the need is so dramatic, right? And I have never forgotten that conversation. Right? So when people say they're just lazy, that you got to look deeper into people's lives to see what's really going on. And these young people are not maliciously not going to school. They're just trying to make sure that their siblings and their parents, that they can survive.
Right.
Isn't that sobering?
It's very sobering. And you think about it, we just met with a client last week. I mean, imagine being in Fairfield County if you couldn't afford a car. How do you get around? Well, you got to take the bus everywhere. Yeah, we met with this family. This was a dad with a couple of kids, and he had a job where he was working hard trying to take care of his family, but he couldn't afford a car, so he was taking Ubers back and forth to work. And by the time the cost of the Ubers, less of, when you take his salary after the cost, he was not bringing much home. So we met with him, worked for them on his finances. We're actually able to lend him money to buy a car. And now he's working 2 jobs and his life has been transformed because he now has transportation. They can take their kids to events, to childcare. And this gentleman wanted to work hard, but it was very difficult for him to get to work. It's a
Right.
similar kind of thing.
Exactly right.
That
Exactly.
many of these folks are not lazy in any way. They want the American dream just as bad as all the rest of
Right.
us do.
Right. Right. Now, let me say this. Let's segue to something else that you're doing that I think is extraordinarily important. You and I and the pastors of Bridgeport and so many other good people who have supported Thomas Merton for many years. We were at the groundbreaking and blessing of the new Thomas Merton facility, much larger, which is not only benefiting Thomas Merton, but it's a whole new strategic vision for Catholic Charities, right? So tell us what it is that you are giving birth to there and hopefully duplicating elsewhere.
Sure, I'd love to talk about that. Thank you, Bishop, and thank you for your help and support of what we're doing at Merton. So many of you may know, hopefully, that the Thomas Merton Center is in its 49th year of serving the chronically homeless, the working poor, the formerly incarcerated, the mentally ill members of the Bridgeport community. And we're the largest daily soup kitchen, food pantry, day shelter in Bridgeport. So Merton's a fantastic facility and such a family and great people who work there and volunteers who help us. But I've always felt, look, it's great that we're feeding people because nobody should go hungry, right? In Fairfield County, with all the wealth that's here, how can we not have food to serve everyone in need? But on the flip side, if 2 years from now, we're still feeding the same 200 people, then to some extent we failed, right? We as Catholic Charities, how do we find a way to work with those folks to get them other services that they need? And so this is what we're doing in Bridgeport, but it's part of the whole strategic plan for Catholic Charities to create this whole family center model where we create these facilities where we can provide a variety of services to the folks in need. And so, Merton is the pilot project. And what we did there is that we sat down with our guests at the Merton Center to find out, we had good ideas, but we said, okay, what are the things that you really need that are impeding your success that could help you get to a better place? And there were 4 things that really came back. Now, of course, food was important. And then the new Merton Center, we're moving about a mile away to 1406 State Street. The current facility has 5,500 square feet. The new facility, when it's remodeled, will have almost 13,000 square feet. So what extra services could we provide? In addition, we'll still have the food, soup kitchen, daily soup kitchen, serving meals. The food pantry serves over 500 families a month, showers, day shelter. But what our clients said to us, what they really needed was healthcare. The majority of the folks that come in to see us never get regular primary health care, behavioral health, mental health counseling, dental care, immigration, legal services, housing assistance, job training. Those were the 4 things that came back. So as we put the new Merton Center together, we've partnered with Southwest Community Health. So Southwest Community Health is the local federally qualified health clinic that serves the Bridgeport area. And they've been chartered by the government really to help provide primary medical care services to really the same clientele that we see, the unemployed, the uninsured, the undocumented. Because what happens is if those folks don't get regular medical care, they end up in the emergency room, and it often is too late for those individuals, and it ends up costing the system a lot more. So we're now going to have a full-fledged medical clinic run by Southwest on the 2nd floor of the new Merton Center building, providing this primary medical care, behavioral health care, and dental care. And then we're moving a lot of other Catholic Charities services there. Our immigration legal services team will be moved to the Thomas Merton Center. So any immigrant family that has questions about the process of getting a green card and qualifying for citizenship can come to the Merton Center. And hopefully those immigrant families can then all take advantage of other services that we provide. We'll have housing case managers there. We're going to have financial literacy training with some partners. We have a vocational training partnership with Housatonic Community College, and hopefully some partnerships with Bellarmine once they're up and running, because Father Kevin O'Brien is on our board. We have some partners that are going to come in and do job training classes. where we can do some, the current the new Thomas Merton Center will have a brand new commercial kitchen. So we'll be able to train people to be cooks and waiters and waitresses. We're going to have ESL classes. We've also formed a partnership with St. Joseph's Parenting Center. So the whole idea is that, Catholic Charities and the diocese is making a big investment to bring this family center to Bridgeport. In the end, it's going to cost us about $5.5 million to put this all together. It's hopefully going to be a visible place where people realize that this is a place that they can come to get help. As I said at the groundbreaking, we're often the first place that people come when they run into trouble, because if they're struggling, we're a place that they can go to get food. So we're sort of the entry point of the social service system often. So we feed them, but then the next step is that we can then provide this variety of services across the diocese. And the hope is over time that we're going to be able to do this in the 4 major urban areas across the diocese, first in Bridgeport, but also Norwalk, Stamford, Danbury. And we're, as you know, Bishop, working on a building in Danbury that would allow us to consolidate all our operations
so
there.
they're number 2. Danbury's number 2.
Hopefully number 2, yes. And we're still negotiating to buy the building. We'll see how that goes. But and then, of course, in Stamford, a lot of those similar services are provided out of New Covenant Center. We need to be able to expand that or get some more space there, but that's the hope. And then we're working with St. Thomas the Apostle Church to hopefully create something. We rent space from that parish that's now our Room to Grow preschool. And the other side of that building was the former Malta House, but we hope we can eventually turn that into another Catholic Charities service center.
Right. So it respects one of the basic principles of Catholic social teaching, is that we respect the human person in his or her integrity. So it's not just feeding them, but also attending to their physical needs, their health needs, their mental health needs, their psychological needs, right? You see the person as the person really is. Interesting thing is, how about the spiritual needs? Something we should talk about.
Yes, but I have great hopes there too, because the Bridgeport pastors have been strong supporters. We had all of them there for the groundbreaking ceremony.
Yeah, that itself is historic. That they're all in one place, and Virginia was
good.
historic.
That was good.
Yeah,
but, we're gonna have some large meeting rooms in the new facility that we hope that the Bridgeport parishes can use for spiritual talks and for. Again, I mentioned we're working with St. Joseph's Parenting Center, where they can maybe come in and provide some parenting classes. But I really also hope that the new Merton Center can be a place where, maybe young people can meet. There's a couple of things. Many young people, we've talked about this, also believe in service, and I think it's a great way to learn the faith and experience the faith through service. So to bring young people together to make meals and provide service. But then after that, after they get to come together to make a meal, maybe they get together for a spiritual talk or, or spirituality on tap or one of those kinds of things.
Or faith sharing, or just, to explore the depth of the meaning of what they did. You mentioned young people. So I have another question I need to ask you. My sense is that young people in particular have come out of COVID with a lot, not all, but a good number of them, with a lot of baggage that has affected their mental health, right? In some sense, the isolation of COVID, the uncertainty of COVID. I mean, I'm old. And when COVID started, you had the sense that, is this like the end of the world? Like, is this really going to spin into a catastrophe? And so could you imagine if you're 10 years old dealing with that and all the uncertainty and thinking to yourself, is this like the beginning of the end kind of thing? So the isolation, the uncertainty, the anxiety, and not to get political, but you see some of this worked out in what's going on in the world. That people are lashing out. People are just attacking people randomly. I just see this as just manifestations of some underlying issues. So now, why do I say all that? Is because I want you to fill in our listeners about the mental health services Catholic Charities provides, especially for young people, right? Because Catholic Charities is at the forefront of that, even though it's extremely expensive, right? We haven't abandoned that. So, Mike, speak to that.
No, thank you, Bishop. I'd love to. And I agree. I think coming out of COVID, so many of our young people are struggling. Unfortunately, the suicide rates are up. There's just, I don't know, when young people see adults fighting, whether it's political, whether it's all these things, that's unsettling. I can't imagine trying to go to school over Zoom, which, we all need socialization, and a lot of that was taken away. You think about all the young people who, whether they were in high school or college, who missed their proms and there's, all these events that people just missed, that you don't ever get back. And I think social media has a lot to do with that too, unfortunately, that, people only post the fantastic things that are happening in their lives. And whenever they do that, other people feel left out. So anyway, we are seeing a significant increase in just anxiety and depression, and especially in young people. And very appropriate, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And very happy to discuss our mental health counseling program that we've sort of rebranded.
Please.
Our new outlook, mental health counseling. And I just think it's so important. The one good thing, I think, back when we were growing up, there was always a stigma associated with going for any sort of counseling. If anybody in any family had mental health issues, it was always something people kept quiet or didn't want the neighbors to know about or whatever. Now, I do find young people are much more willing to talk about and address mental health issues, just like it's a cold or a sore throat, and it's something that really needs to be dealt with. But so, at Catholic Charities, we have a 50-year history of providing affordable and accessible mental health counseling services. And we have, our main offices are in Danbury and in Norwalk, but via telehealth, we can help anyone around the diocese. And again, we help anyone who has need. So I think sometimes people think, well, Catholic Charities mental health counseling is only for people who are poor or struggling. And yes, we can provide those. We take all forms of insurance. We take, many counselors don't take Medicaid. We take Medicaid. We work with people who are uninsured to try to put something together. But we can also provide those services to lots of other people, not including, people who are considered poor. What's really distressed me quite a bit is that, mental health counseling is now almost getting to be something that is only accessible to the wealthy. So what's happened is there's not enough mental health counselors in our community. So the social workers are wonderful and they do fantastic work. Coming out of COVID, there's a lot of demand for their services. So what's happened in certain places, in certain wealthier towns around the county, counselors are charging $500 an hour and not taking insurance. So they say, okay,
$500 an hour.
Yes.
Really?
And, in some places, if little Johnny or little Susie needs counseling in a wealthy area and people are struggling, they'll pay whatever it takes.
Wow.
And, so many social workers are going into private practice where they can get paid big dollars to do that. And I guess I'm not begrudging those social workers to some extent, but I hear all kinds of stories of people who have kids, teens, young people who need help, and they call around to counseling services, and there's often a 2, 3, 4 month wait for services.
Which could be too late.
At Catholic Charities, we are open and ready to help people. We may have a 2-day or 3-day or 1 week wait, but there's no 3, 4 month wait. And we're happy to work with anybody throughout the spectrum. And, if people have, and anybody who's listening, if you know anybody that's struggling with mental health issues, you have somebody in your family that's struggling, go to ccfairfield.org and go to our mental health counseling. You can reach out and connect with our counseling office either via email or via phone, and we're happy to help. But
That's great to know.
If people are suffering from anxiety and depression, they need to do something about it rather than wait until until it's too late.
Right. It's like nothing. The point about the stigma is very well taken. And I remember that when I was a boy, you never spoke about any of that stuff ever. But it's no different than physical health. If you have a physical condition and you ignore it, it becomes more and more severe and harder to treat. Same with mental health. If you ignore the signs and you leave it be, you can get to the point where the intervention has to be dramatic, when if you had acted a year earlier, it would not have been as dramatic, right? So exactly. Well, that's very good news, right? That Charities is able to do that. And once again, something that we are proud of, that we offer to anyone in need. Anyone can come.
Yes.
All right. So now I have a very complicated question. You ready? Okay. And this takes you outside of your mission, I think, but it's inside the church's mission. And that is, we as a church are committed to bring the kingdom of God one person at a time, as much as we can, into our midst, until the Lord heals what we cannot heal. And you're doing a phenomenal job. But a lot of what you've described, my friend, is because of the systems we have created or tolerate that continually perpetuate these inequalities, these structures, in some cases discrimination, and so many racism, so many other things that we've talked about over and over again. And we need to come to a point where people of faith, and not just Catholics, but people of faith, but particularly Catholic Christians, all their organizations and institutions have to start asking some hard questions about the systems that continue to create this situation in people's lives. Now, I don't think it's specific to Catholic Charities, but we're at the front line of that, I think, trying to so what's your thoughts about that? Personal thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's complicated. It's complicated, and Steve tells me I have 2 minutes. I don't know. There's so many different things that really go into this, but housing is a big part. The state of Connecticut is 25,000 units short on housing, and poor people all get kind of pushed to the same neighborhoods, which then creates much more difficulty. Zoning rules. I've been involved in a lot of these things. Everybody agrees we need affordable housing, but nobody wants it anywhere near their home, right? and somehow the zoning rules kind of perpetuate that, right? And that low income housing in some areas, is still very expensive. If it's Greenwich and Canaan or Darien or some of those other places. Our immigration system is badly in need of being repaired. Neither Democratic nor Republican administrations have been able to address it or figure it out. And, we get complaints from time to time. It's like, you're not helping immigrants, are you? And look, my response to that is, we don't make immigration policy. The government kind of decides who gets let in and is not let in. But when they show up at our doorstep, they're human beings and they're children of God. And so if they show up, I don't ask them for their card as a U.S. citizen. If they're hungry or they're homeless, our job is to help them. And we have a major problem of income inequality.
What would Jesus have done, Mike? Excuse me for interrupting. Jesus in the Gospels didn't say, by the way, tell me if you're a God-fearing, Sabbath-observing, tithing, faithful Jew, and I'll help you. He didn't do that.
No, Jesus always hung out with the tax collectors, the renegades,
my former friends. Yeah, all those basically all exactly.
Those are the people we hang out with all the time. And again, I wish I had an easy answer, but the systems need to change to
exactly
be fairer to those who grow up in much more difficult circumstances.
I think we're going to have a podcast in the future where a few of us are going to and really talk about this, not because we're going to solve it in a podcast, but just to ask questions that people can start thinking.
Yes.
Right. That's the first step.
I mean, I don't believe the answer is handouts, because I've seen a lot of this through some of the government programs that we observe, when people are given money, they don't learn how to earn it, and they don't. And so we need to find ways to give people a hand up. And that's what we're trying to do each and every day at Catholic Charities.
Right. Well done.
Yeah, this is a huge topic of conversation, because it also involved is families and being intact and all that. But we should definitely do this on a future show, Excellency. But we do need to take a break. So this is Let Me Be Frank on the Veritas Catholic Network. His Excellency has been speaking with Mike Donoghue, the Executive Director of Catholic Charities here in Fairfield County, and we'll be back with a listener question. Okay, welcome back to Let Me Be Frank on the Veritas Catholic Network. All right, Excellency. I like this question. Okay, it says, "Hi, Steve. Thank you for letting me be frank. It's a blessing to me. I'm just curious to ask the bishop if he has advice on how to keep kids engaged in the faith over the summer with no school and no CCD. And also, does Bishop Frank have anything fun planned for the summer? Thank you, and God bless you."
Oh, the first part is easy. I think lots of parishes in our diocese have summer Bible camp and activities for young people. Here you have Veritas, right? There's the camp, right? Run by what is it? Ryan
Young. Mm-hmm.
Ryan Young. There's lots of things, and I think you have to see for two things. First, kids need to relax and rest. Two, we don't have to overprogram them, but you want to keep their eyes focused on the things of faith. So those are the sort of things I would highly recommend. As for me personally, my definition of fun is very different from everybody else's definition. Okay. And this may be why I need mental health, possibly, Mike. I may be calling your hotline in not too distant future. But
please do.
I'm lined up because it's the fourth year in the cycle. So this year, for 9 days, I'm going to repaint the entire apartment. One room at a time. And I absolutely love it. You have a sense of satisfaction. It's just everything is clean. Then you could have a barbecue, go out with friends at night. It's just, that's my, Ruber is not my idea of fun. That's my idea of fun. And that's what I'm doing this summer.
Sounds like a blast, Excellency. If you don't mind, I'll also add, there are lots of places where you can take your family not too far away for like a mini day trip / pilgrimage retreat, like Stockbridge, Massachusetts, or Litchfield, Lourdes and Litchfield, things like that. Okay.
And lots of great movies to watch.
Yes, and lots of great radio to listen to.
Exactly.
That goes without saying.
All right. So if you have a question for Bishop Frank, send it in on social media, or you can email questions@veritascatholic.com. Bishop Frank Caggiano is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So is Veritas Catholic Network. And we'd like to thank our sponsor, Foundations in Faith. A grant from the St. Therese Fund for Evangelization makes it possible for us to bring Let Me Be Frank to you. Foundations in Faith is committed to supporting and transforming pastoral ministries in the Diocese of Bridgeport, and you can learn more about their outstanding work at foundationsinfaith.org. Mike Donoghue, thank you for everything that you do and for being here with us today.
Without a doubt.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Bishop Frank. It's been an honor and a blessing to be with both of you. So thank you and have a great day.
Mike,
and everybody, go ahead. I'm sorry, Excellency.
I was going to say, Mike, you're doing a phenomenal job. You really are.
You're too kind. Thank you, Bishop.
No, it's the truth. It's the truth. And just what you just described, you've taken Catholic Charities to a whole nother level of effectiveness and presence in the community. I'm deeply grateful for everything that you're doing. And just to give you a plug, Steve wants to give you a plug. I'm going to give it first. People, Thomas Merton, this huge project you're working on. I'm listening and saying, I want to help financially this project. Where do people go? Same website?
Same, ccfairfield.org. Happy to give anyone a tour of the new facility and really show them great work that we're doing.
Great.
Awesome. Excellency, before we go, would you please give us your blessing?
Oh, sure, of course. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord our God, send your Holy Spirit down upon all who are listening to us, most especially upon Mike and all those who are involved in Catholic Charities, for they are your hands and feet and voice in the world. Bless their work, and bless all those whom they serve, and keep us always faithful to you, Lord. For we ask this as we ask all things in the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you, my friends. Mike, I will see you soon. Steve, I'll see you next week.